The book of Esther, chapter 1, verse 1, Esther 1 and 1. Esther, the first chapter and the first verse. Queen Vashti disobeys the king. This is what happened during the time when Xerxes was king. Xerxes ruled over the 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. King Xerxes ruled from his throne in the capital city of Susa. In the third year of Xerxes' rule, he gave a party for his officers and leaders. The army leaders and important leaders from all of Persia and Media were there. The party continued for 180 days. All during this time, King Xerxes was showing the great wealth of his kingdom and the majestic beauty and wealth of his palace. And when the 100 days were over, King Xerxes gave another party that continued for 7 days. It was held in the inside garden of the palace. All the people who were in the capital of Susa were invited, from the most important to the least important. The inside garden had white and blue linen hangings around the room. They were held in place with cords of white linen and purple material on silver rings and marble pillars. There were couches made of gold and silver. They were sitting on mosaic. And every cup was different. There was plenty of the king's wine because the king was very generous. The king had given a command to his servants. He told them that each guest must be given as much wine as he wanted, and the wine server obeyed the king. Queen Vashti also gave a party for the women in the king's palace. On the seventh day of the party, King Xerxes was in high spirits from drinking wine. He gave a command to the 7 eunuchs who served him. The eunuchs were Mehunman, Biztha, Harbana, Bigtha, Agbatha, Zethar, and Carcass. He commanded them to bring Queen Vashti to him wearing her royal crown. She was to come so that she could show her beauty to the leaders and the important people. She was very beautiful. But when the eunuchs told Queen Vashti about the king's command, she refused to come. The king was very angry. It was the custom for the king to ask the advice of the experts about the laws and punishments. So King Xerxes spoke with the wise men who understood the laws. They were very close to the king. Their names were Karshina, Shethar, Admatha, Tarhish, Meres, Marcina, and Mukan. They were the 7 most important officials of Persia and Media. They had special privileges to see the king. They were the highest officials in the kingdom. The king asked them, "What does the law say must be done to Queen Vashti? She's not obeyed the command of King Xerxes that the eunuchs had taken to her." Then Memucan answered the king with the other officials listening. "Queen Vashti has done wrong. She has done wrong against the king and also against all the leaders and the people of all the provinces of King Xerxes. I say this because all the other women will hear about what Queen Vashti did. Then they will stop obeying their husbands. They will say to their husbands, 'King Xerxes commanded Queen Vashti to be brought to him, but she refused to come.' Today, the wives of the Persian and Median leaders have heard what the queen did, and these women will be influenced by what she did. They will do the same thing to the king's most important leaders, and there will be plenty of disrespect and anger. So if it pleases the king, here is a suggestion. Let the king give a royal command and let it be written in the laws of Persia and Media. The laws of Persia and Media cannot be changed. The royal command should be that Vashti is never again to enter the presence of King Xerxes. Let the king also give her royal position to someone else who is better than she. Then when the king's command is announced in all parts of his large kingdom, all the women will respect their husbands. From the most important to the least important, all women will respect their husbands." The king and his important officials were happy with the advice, so King Xerxes did as Memucan suggested. King Xerxes sent letters to all parts of the kingdom. He sent them to each province written in its own language and sent them to each nation in its own language. These letters announced in each person's language that every man was to be the ruler over his own family. The book of Esther, chapter 2, verse 1. Esther made queen. And what is this? Cookies. Okay. Later, King Xerxes stopped being angry. Then he remembered Vashti and what she had done. He remembered his commands about her. Then the king's personal servants had a suggestion. They said, "Search for beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king choose the leaders in every province of his kingdom. Then let the leaders bring every beautiful young virgin to the capital city of Susa. These young women will be put with the group of the king's women. They will be under the care of Hegai, the king's eunuch who is in charge of the women. Then give beauty treatments to all of them. Then let the one who is pleasing to the king become the new queen in Vashti's place. The king liked the suggestion, so he accepted it. Now there was a Jew from the tribe of Benjamin named Mordecai. Mordecai was the son of Jair. Jair was the son of Shimei. Shimei was the son of Kish. Mordecai was in the capital city, Susa. Mordecai had been carried into captivity from Jerusalem by King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. He was with the group that was taken into captivity with King Jehoiakim of Judah. Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah. She didn't have a father or mother, so Mordecai took care of her. Mordecai had adopted her as his own daughter when her father and mother died. Hadassah was also called Esther. She had a very pretty face and a good figure. When the king's command had been heard, many young women were brought to the capital city of Susa. They were put under the care of Hegai. Esther was one of these women. She was taken to the king's palace and put in Hegai's care. Hegai was in charge of the king's women. He liked Esther. She became his favorite, so he quickly gave Esther beauty treatments and special food. He chose 7 slave women from the king's palace and gave them to Esther. Then he moved Esther and her 7 women servants into the best place where the king's women lived. Esther didn't tell anyone she was a Jew. She didn't tell anyone about her family background because Mordecai had told her not to. Every day, Mordecai walked back and forth near the area where the king's women lived. He did this because he wanted to find out how Esther was and what was happening to her. Before a young woman could take her turn to go in before King Xerxes, she had to complete 12 months of beauty treatment, 6 months with oil of myrrh, 6 months with perfumes and cosmetics. When her time came to go into the king, she could choose to wear or take whatever she wanted from the women's living area. In the evening, the young women would go to the king's palace, and in the morning, she would return to another area where the king's women lived. Then she would be placed under the care of a man named Shazgaz. She was the king's eunuch in charge. He was, rather, the king's eunuch in charge of the slave women. She would not go back to the king unless he was pleased with her. Then he would call her by name to come back to him. The time for Esther came for Esther to go to the king. She was the one Mordecai had adopted, the daughter of his uncle Abihail. All she wanted to take with her was what Haggai, the king's officer in charge of the women, suggested. Everyone who saw Esther liked her. So Esther was taken to King Xerxes in the palace. This happened in the 10th month, the month of Tebeth, in the year of his rule. The king loved Esther more than any of the other young women, and she became his favorite. He approved of her more than any of the others. So King Xerxes put a crown on Esther's head and made her the new queen in place of Vashti. And the king gave a big party for Esther. It was all for his important people and leaders. He announced a festival in all the provinces and sent out gifts to people because he was a generous king. Mordecai learns about an evil plan. Mordecai was sitting next to the king's gate at the time the young women were gathered together the second time. Esther had still kept it a secret that she was a Jew. She had not told anyone about her family background. This is what Mordecai had told her to do. She still obeyed Mordecai just as she had done when he was taking care of her. During the time Mordecai was sitting next to the king's gate, this happened. Bigthana and Teresh, 2 of the king's officers who guarded the doorway, became angry with the king. They began to make plans to kill King Xerxes. But Mordecai learned about these plans and told Queen Esther. Then she told the king. She also told that Mordecai was the one who had learned about the evil plan. Then the report was checked out. It was learned that Mordecai's report was true. The 2 guards who had planned to kill the king were hanged on a post. All these things were written down in a book of the king's histories in front of the king. The book of Esther, chapter 3, verse 1. Esther 3 and 1. Haman's plan to destroy the Jews. After these things happened, King Xerxes honored Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. The king promoted Haman and gave him a place of honor more important than any of the other leaders. All the king's leaders at the king's gate would bow down and give honor to Haman. This is what the king commanded them to do, but Mordecai refused to bow down and give honor to Haman. Then the king's leaders at the gate asked Mordecai, "Why don't you obey the king's command to bow down to Haman?" Day after day, the king's leaders spoke to Mordecai, but he refused to obey the command to bow down to Haman. So they told Haman about it. They wanted to see what Haman would do to Mordecai. Mordecai had told them that he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai refused to bow down to him or give honor, he was very angry. Haman had learned that Mordecai was a Jew, but he was not satisfied to kill only Mordecai. He also wanted to find a way to destroy all of Mordecai's people, the Jews, and all of Xerxes' kingdom. In the 12th year of King Xerxes' rule, in the first month, the month of Nisan, Haman threw lots to choose a special day and month. And the 12th month, the month of Adar, was chosen. At that time, the lot was called Pur. Then Haman came to the King Xerxes and said, King Xerxes, there's a certain group of people scattered among people in all the provinces of your kingdom. Keep themselves separate from other people. Their customs are different from all the other people, and they don't obey the king's laws. It is not right for the king to allow them to continue to live in your kingdom. If it pleases the king, I have a suggestion. Give a command to destroy these people, and I will put 750,000 pounds of silver into the king's treasury. This money could be used to pay the men who do these things. So the king took the official ring off his finger and gave it to Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite. Haman was the enemy of the Jews, and the king said to Haman, keep the money, do what you want with them. Then on the 13th day of the first month, the king's secretaries were called. They wrote out all of Haman's commands in the language of each province and wrote them in the language of each group of people, and wrote to the king's satraps, the governors of the different provinces and the leaders of the different groups of people, and wrote with the authority of King Xerxes himself, and sealed the commands with the king's own ring. Messengers carried the letters to all the king's provinces. The letters were the king's command to ruin, kill, and completely destroy all the Jews. This meant young people, old people, women, and little children too. The command was to kill all the Jews on a single day. The day was to be the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, and the command was to take everything that belonged to the Jews. A copy of the letters with the command was to be given as a law. It was to be a law in every province and announced to the people of every nation living in the kingdom. Then everyone would be ready for that day. At the king's command, the messengers hurried off. The command was given in the capital city of Susa. The king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa was in confusion. This is the word of the Lord. Place these words in the comment section. This is the word of the Lord. Follow, like, share, and subscribe, and encourage others to read along with us as we read through the